You wake up at 6:30 a.m. to the same alarm playing the same song that you've grown to hate. You brush your teeth, looking at yourself in the mirror, and for just a split second, you don't recognize the person staring back. You commute to work through the same traffic, listening to the same news, feeling the same low-level anxiety creeping up your chest. You sit at your desk, answering emails that don't matter, attending meetings that could have been emails, checking your phone every 12 minutes, scrolling through lives that seem so much more vibrant than yours. You come home, exhausted, not from doing something meaningful, but from doing nothing that feels real. You watch Netflix, order takeout, scroll Instagram, and fall asleep to the blue glow of your phone. And then you wake up and do it all over again. But here's the thing. One night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, a question slips into your mind like water through a crack in concrete. Is this all life is supposed to be? Is this it? Am I just existing? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, once said something that will chill you to the bone. Man cannot stand a meaningless life. He didn't say man dislikes a meaningless life or man prefers meaning. He said man cannot stand a meaningless life. Which means if you're feeling empty, if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling like you're sleepwalking through your days, you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not ungrateful. You're experiencing something far more profound. Your soul is rebelling. Your unconscious mind is sending you a signal so loud, so persistent that it's breaking through the noise of your daily routine. What you call boredom, what you call restlessness, what you call that weird feeling in your chest when you're alone with your thoughts. That's not weakness. That's your inner wisdom screaming at you, begging you to pay attention. Because here's what Jung discovered through decades of working with patients through his own dark night of the soul. The human psyche has an innate drive not just for survival, not just for pleasure, not just for success, but for meaning. And when that drive is ignored, when it's suppressed, when it's numbed with distractions, it doesn't just disappear. It turns inward and becomes the very anxiety, the very depression, the very sense of emptiness that's eating you alive. So if you've ever laid in bed at 2 a.m. wondering if this is all there is, if you've ever felt successful on paper but empty on the inside, if you've ever had that haunting feeling that you're living someone else's life but you don't know how to find your own, then what you're about to discover might just save you. Because Jung didn't just identify the problem. He found the cure. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah had everything that society told her she should want. A corner office at a Fortune 500 company, a six-figure salary, a beautiful apartment in the city, a social media feed that made her life look perfect. But every Sunday night, she'd sit on her couch and feel this crushing weight on her chest. Not because Monday meant more work, but because Monday meant more emptiness. More meetings about nothing, more projects that didn't matter, more days of feeling like she was playing a character in a movie she never auditioned for. Sarah came to therapy not because of a breakdown, but because of what Jung called the neurosis of meaninglessness. And here's the thing. Sarah's story is everyone's story. We live in the richest, most connected, most opportunity-filled time in human history. And yet, rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are at all-time highs. We have more, but feel less. We're more connected, but more lonely. We're more successful, but more empty. Why? Because we've confused having a life with living a life. We've confused being busy with being alive. We've confused achieving goals with having purpose. Jung observed this pattern in patient after patient in his own life in the collective psyche of modern civilization. People don't collapse from overwork. They collapse from emptiness. They don't break from too much pressure. They break from too little meaning. The symptoms are everywhere. That friend who has it all together but drinks a bottle of wine every night. That colleague who's climbing the corporate ladder but can't get out of bed on weekends. That family member who's always traveling, always busy, always doing something but never seems present. These aren't isolated cases. This is the invisible crisis of our time. Jung called it the general neurosis of our age. And here's what's terrifying. Most people don't even realize they're sick. They think this emptiness, this restlessness, this sense of something's missing is just normal. They think everyone feels this way. They think this is just what adulthood is. But Jung knew better. He knew that when you strip away the external trappings, the achievements, the possessions, the status symbols, what's left is either a rich inner life full of meaning and purpose, or a vast, echoing emptiness. And that emptiness doesn't stay quiet. It manifests as anxiety, depression, addiction, workaholism, shopping addiction, social media obsession, Serial relationships, constant travel, anything to avoid sitting alone with the silence inside your own mind. But here's the paradox. The very things we use to escape the emptiness only make it deeper. The more we run from it, the bigger it grows. The more we numb it, the louder it screams. Until one day you wake up and realize you've built a beautiful life that you don't want to live. There's a moment that everyone experiences but no one talks about. It usually happens when you're alone. Maybe you're in your car at a red light and the music stops, and for just a few seconds there's complete silence. And in that silence you feel it. A hollow space right in the center of your chest. Not pain, exactly, but an absence where something should be. You shake it off, turn up the music, call someone, check your phone, anything to fill that space. But it's still there. It's always there. Jung called this the void. And here's what he discovered through years of research and personal experience. This void isn't a bug in the human system. It's a feature. It's your soul's way of telling you that something essential is missing. Most people, when they feel this emptiness, they immediately try to fill it. With achievement, with relationships, with shopping, with food, with drugs, with work, with anything external. But Jung discovered something revolutionary. The void cannot be filled from the outside. You can have the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect body, the perfect house, the perfect life, and still feel completely empty. Because the emptiness isn't about what you don't have. It's about who you're not being. Let me explain. Jung believed that every human being has what he called the self with a capital S. Not the ego, not the persona, not the mask you wear in public. But your authentic, core, essential nature. Your unique combination of talents, interests, values, dreams, and calling. And when you're living aligned with the self, you feel whole. You feel connected. You feel like your life matters. But when you're living disconnected from the self, when you're living someone else's idea of who you should be, that's when the void opens up. That's when you can have everything and feel like you have nothing. Jung put it perfectly. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There's no recipe for living that suits all cases. We spend so much time trying to fit into society's shoes, our parents' shoes, our friends' shoes, that we forget we have our own feet. We forget that meaning isn't one size fits all. What gives your best friend purpose might drain you. What makes your parents proud might make you miserable. What looks successful from the outside might feel like prison from the inside. The void is your psyche's way of saying, this isn't you. This isn't your path. This isn't your life. And the only way to heal the void is not to fill it, but to listen to it, to understand what it's trying to tell you, to use it as a compass pointing you toward your authentic self. Because here's the truth. That will change everything. You're not lost. You're just disconnected. Here's the question that changed everything for one of Jung's most famous patients. What part of me have I been ignoring? The patient was a successful businessman who came to Jung because despite having everything he thought he wanted, he felt dead inside. Jung didn't ask him, what do you want to achieve? He didn't ask, what are your goals? He asked, what part of you have you abandoned? And that's when the real work began. Because here's what Jung discovered through decades of clinical work. Meaning doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from validation, achievement, success, or even love. Those things can enhance meaning, but they cannot create it. Meaning is an inside job. It starts when you stop asking, what should I do with my life? And start asking, who am I beneath all the roles, expectations, and identities I've accumulated? Jung called this process individuation. It's the journey of becoming who you truly are, not who your parents want you to be, not who society expects you to be, not who you think you should be, but who you authentically, essentially, are. And this journey always begins with the same realization. Most of what you call your personality, your preferences, your beliefs, isn't actually yours. It's inherited, absorbed, adopted from your family, your culture, your peers, your experiences. You're like a house that's been painted and repainted so many times that you've forgotten what the original structure looks like. Individuation is the process of stripping away all those layers of paint until you find the authentic foundation underneath. And here's where it gets interesting. Jung discovered that your authentic self is not something you create. It's something you uncover. It's already there, waiting for you, beneath all the conditioning, all the expectations, all the roles you play. Your job isn't to become someone new. Your job is to remember who you've always been. But here's the challenge. This remembering requires you to do something that most people are terrified to do. You have to get quiet. You have to stop moving. You have to stop achieving. You have to stop performing. You have to sit with yourself in complete silence and listen. Not to podcasts, not to music, not to advice, not to other people's opinions. But to the quiet voice deep inside that's been trying to get your attention your entire life. Jung called this voice the self. And he believed that connecting with the self is not just the path to meaning. It's the path to psychological wholeness. It's the path to inner peace. It's the path to authentic happiness. But first, you have to be willing to listen. At 3:17 a.m., Michael woke up from the same dream he'd been having for 3 months. He was in a library, but all the books were blank. He would pull book after book from the shelves, opening them desperately, searching for words, for meaning, for anything. But every page was empty. He'd wake up with his heart racing, feeling more exhausted than when he went to sleep. Michael thought he was losing his mind, but Jung would have told him he was finding it. Because Jung discovered that when we ignore the voice of our authentic self during our waking hours, it doesn't stay silent. It speaks to us through dreams, through symbols, through what he called synchronicity. Your unconscious mind is constantly trying to communicate with you. It's constantly sending you messages about who you really are, what you really need, what you're really meant to do. But most of us have been trained to ignore these messages. We've been taught that dreams are just random brain activity, that coincidences are just coincidences, that gut feelings are just indigestion. But Jung knew better. He spent his entire career studying the language of the unconscious. And what he discovered will blow your mind. Your psyche has its own intelligence. It knows things that your conscious mind doesn't know. It sees patterns that your logical brain can't see. It understands what you need for psychological wholeness better than any therapist, any book, any guru. And it's constantly trying to guide you toward your authentic path. The question is, are you listening? Here's what to look for. Recurring dreams, especially ones that feel important, even if they don't make logical sense. Michael's blank book dream was his unconscious mind telling him that his current life had no meaning, no substance, no authentic content. Strange coincidences that feel too meaningful to be random. Like thinking about an old friend and then running into them the next day. Like seeing the same number or symbol or phrase multiple times in unrelated contexts. Jung called this synchronicity, and he believed it was the universe's way of confirming that you're on the right path. Repeated emotional patterns that keep showing up in your relationships, your work, your life. If you keep attracting the same type of toxic boss, the same type of unavailable partner, the same type of draining friendship, your unconscious is trying to show you something about yourself that needs healing. Physical symptoms that have no medical explanation. Chronic fatigue when your life looks fine on paper. Anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. Insomnia despite being exhausted. Jung believed that the body holds the wisdom that the mind refuses to acknowledge. Your body knows when you're living out of alignment with your authentic self. And it will keep sending you signals until you listen. Here's the beautiful thing. Once you start paying attention to these messages, once you start treating your dreams, your intuition, your body, your coincidences as sources of wisdom, your life starts to align. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. People appear who can help you on your journey. Opportunities present themselves that are perfectly suited to your authentic nature. Jung called this meaningful coincidence. But I call it life conspiring to help you become who you're meant to be. There's a part of you that you've spent your entire life trying to hide. Not just from other people, but from yourself. The angry part, the selfish part, the lazy part, the scared part, the petty part, the jealous part. All the aspects of your personality that don't fit with your ideal self-image. Jung called this the shadow. And he made a shocking discovery. The very qualities you most desperately try to hide or deny or fix are often the key to finding your authentic power. Let me explain. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to be good, trying to be nice, helpful, selfless, positive, agreeable. And there's nothing wrong with these qualities. But when you completely reject your shadow qualities, when you pretend you don't have anger, selfishness, darkness, complexity, you don't become more authentic. You become less human. You become a cardboard cutout of a person. Jung put it perfectly. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Here's what this means. That anger you're so ashamed of might contain important information about your boundaries. That selfishness you judge so harshly might be your neglected need for self-care. That jealousy you try so hard to suppress might be pointing you toward what you really want. That laziness you constantly fight might be your body's wisdom telling you to rest. Jung discovered that when people make friends with their shadow, when they stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be whole, something magical happens. They become more authentic, more interesting, more alive, more human, and paradoxically more lovable. Because people can sense authenticity, they can tell when someone is being real versus performing. And authenticity, even with its flaws, is always more attractive than perfection. But here's the challenge. Making friends with your shadow requires you to do something that goes against every instinct you have. You have to stop running from the parts of yourself you don't like. You have to turn around and face them. You have to ask yourself uncomfortable questions. What am I really angry about? What do I really want that I'm too scared to admit? What am I pretending not to know about myself? What would I do if no one was watching? If no one was judging? These questions will make you squirm. They will bring up feelings, thoughts, desires that you've spent years trying to suppress. But Jung discovered that on the other side of that discomfort is freedom, the freedom to be yourself completely without apology, the freedom to stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not, the freedom to channel all that shadow energy into something creative, powerful, meaningful. Because here's the secret. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your untapped potential. It's your unexpressed creativity. It's your authentic power waiting to be integrated and expressed in healthy ways. The path to meaning doesn't run around your darkness. It runs straight through it. There are two types of people in this world: those who consume their lives away and those who create their way to meaning. The consumers spend their days taking in other people's thoughts, other people's entertainment, other people's dreams. They scroll, they binge, they shop, they collect experiences like Pokemon cards, but at the end of the day, they feel empty because consumption, no matter how pleasurable, is ultimately passive. It's life happening to you, not through you. The creators, on the other hand, understand something fundamental. Meaning is not something you find. It's something you build. Jung was obsessed with this idea. He believed that humans are fundamentally creative beings. And when we're not creating, when we're just consuming, we start to psychologically wither like a muscle that atrophies from lack of use. But here's what Jung meant by create. He didn't just mean art or music or writing, though those are powerful forms of creation. He meant any act of bringing something into existence that wasn't there before, creating a meal with intention, creating a conversation that matters, creating a solution to a problem, creating a ritual that brings meaning to your day, creating a relationship built on authenticity, creating a life that reflects your values. Jung himself was a master creator. When he went through his own dark night of the soul, his own confrontation with meaninglessness, he didn't just think his way out. He created his way out. He built stone sculptures with his own hands. He painted mandalas that expressed his inner journey. He wrote in what he called the Red Book, a record of his conversations with his unconscious mind. Through creating, he discovered who he really was. Through creating, he found his path. Through creating, he transformed his suffering into wisdom. And this is available to all of us. But here's the key. The creation has to be personally meaningful. It has to express something authentic about you. Can't be creation for applause, creation for money, creation for approval. It has to be creation for connection. Connection to yourself. Connection to something larger. Connection to the mystery of being alive. Jung put it beautifully, life has no meaning. Each of us brings meaning to it. Think about that. Life doesn't come preloaded with meaning. You don't discover meaning like you discover a hidden treasure. You create meaning through the choices you make, the relationships you build, the work you do, the art you make, the love you give. Every day, you wake up with a blank canvas, and every choice, every action, every moment of attention is a brushstroke. The question is, what are you painting? Are you painting someone else's vision of what your life should look like? Or are you painting your own authentic masterpiece? Because here's the truth. Your life is your greatest creative work, and the time to start creating is now. Let me paint you a picture of the average human life. Monday, alarm goes off, coffee, commute, work, lunch, work, commute, dinner, TV, bed. Tuesday, alarm goes off, coffee, commute, work, lunch, work, commute, dinner, TV, bed. Wednesday, alarm goes off, coffee, commute, work, lunch, work, commute, dinner, TV, bed. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, rinse and repeat for 40 years. Jung called this the loop, and he observed that most people live their entire lives inside this loop without ever stepping back and asking, is this what I want? Is this who I am? Is this how I want to spend the only life I'll ever have? The loop is seductive, it's safe, it's predictable. It requires no difficult decisions, no uncomfortable questions, no scary risks, but it also requires no growth, no authenticity, no meaning. Jung discovered that the people who find meaning in their lives are the people who learn to step outside the loop, not permanently, but regularly. They create what he called moments of pause, moments where they stop the automatic, unconscious repetition and ask, am I living or just existing? Did I do something today that felt real? Did I connect with something larger than myself? Did I express something authentic? These moments of pause are where transformation begins. Because here's what Jung understood. Change doesn't happen through big dramatic gestures. It happens through small, conscious choices. The choice to take a different route to work. The choice to have a real conversation instead of small talk. The choice to create something instead of consuming something. The choice to sit in silence for 5 minutes instead of immediately reaching for your phone. The choice to ask yourself, what do I really want? And actually listen to the answer. Jung himself had a daily practice of stepping outside the loop. Every morning, he would sit by the lake near his home and just be present. He would notice the water, the trees, the sky, his own breathing. He would ask his unconscious mind, what do you want me to know today? And then He would listen, not for answers, necessarily, but for aliveness, for connection, for meaning. This practice, this daily stepping outside the loop, changed everything for Jung, connected him to his authentic self. It gave him access to his creativity. It allowed him to live a meaningful life, and it's available to you too. But it requires one thing: the courage to pause, the courage to step outside the rushing river of daily life and ask yourself, who am I when I'm not busy? What do I want when no one else is listening? What would I do if I wasn't afraid? These questions will change your life, but only if you're brave enough to answer them. After years of working with patients, analyzing dreams, and exploring his own psyche, Jung identified 5 fundamental sources of human meaning, 5 wellsprings that, when tapped, can transform even the most seemingly mundane life into something rich, significant, and deeply satisfying. Your body is not just a vehicle for your mind. It's a source of wisdom, connection, and meaning. Jung observed that people who are disconnected from their physical selves often feel disconnected from life itself. But when you move your body with intention, when you breathe with awareness, when you eat with presence, when you touch and are touched with love, you remember that you're not just a thinking machine, you're a living, breathing, embodied being. And this remembering is a source of profound meaning. Source number 2, creative expression. Every human being has something unique to express, a perspective, a gift, a way of seeing that has never existed before and will never exist again. Jung believed that when you suppress this creative impulse, when you convince yourself that you're not creative or that your expression doesn't matter, you cut yourself off from one of the most fundamental sources of meaning. But creativity doesn't have to be artistic, can be the way you solve problems, the way you make people laugh, the way you organize your space, the way you cook a meal. Anything that expresses your unique way of being in the world. Jung discovered that meaning is not just an individual pursuit. It emerges in the space between authentic selves. When you drop your masks, your pretenses, your need to impress, and connect with another person soul to soul, something magical happens. You remember that you're not alone in this mysterious experience of being human. You remember that your struggles, your joys, your fears, your hopes are shared. You remember that love is not just an emotion, but a force that connects all living things. There are moments when something beautiful stops you in your tracks. A piece of music that makes you cry for no reason. A sunset that takes your breath away. A work of art that speaks to something deep inside you. A moment in nature when you feel connected to everything. Jung called these numinous experiences. Moments when the ordinary world becomes transparent, and you glimpse something larger, more mysterious, more meaningful than everyday reality. These experiences remind you that there's more to existence than what you can measure or control or understand. They connect you to the sacred, the transcendent, the divine, however you define it. Finally, Jung observed that meaning often emerges when we contribute to something larger than ourselves. When we use our gifts, our energy, our time to make a positive difference in the world. This doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be mentoring a young person. It can be caring for an aging parent. It can be doing your work with excellence and integrity. It can be being kind to strangers. It can be leaving any situation better than you found it. Jung believed that when you align your life with service, you tap into something timeless, something that transcends your individual existence. You become part of the larger story of human flourishing. Here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to choose just one of these sources. In fact, Jung discovered that the richest, most meaningful lives draw from all five. They create what he called a symphony of meaning. Physical vitality, creative expression, authentic love, experiences of beauty, and contribution to the world. Woven together into a life that feels whole, a life that whispers with every breath. This matters. There's a moment that comes to every person who decides to live a meaningful life. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not what you'd expect. It's quiet, almost whisper-soft. But when it happens, everything changes. It happened to Jung at age 38. When he was at the height of his career success, but felt completely empty inside. It happened to a client of mine, named David, on a Tuesday morning while he was making coffee in his corporate kitchen. It happened to my friend Sarah while she was sitting in traffic on her way to a job she hated. The moment is different for everyone, but it always involves the same quiet recognition. I don't want to just exist anymore. I don't want to sleepwalk through my days. I don't want to live someone else's idea of a good life. I want to live fully. That's it. That's the moment. The moment when you decide that meaning matters more than comfort. That authenticity matters more than approval. That aliveness matters more than safety. For Jung, this moment came during what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. He was successful, respected, well-known. But he felt like he was living a lie. So he made a radical decision. He stepped away from his secure position as Freud's protege. He began exploring his own inner world. He started paying attention to his dreams, his fantasies, his deep, authentic impulses. And through this process, he discovered not just his own meaning, but insights that would help millions of people find theirs. For David, the moment came when he realized he'd been working 60-hour weeks for 5 years to pay for a lifestyle he didn't even enjoy. The big house felt empty. The expensive car felt meaningless. The prestigious job felt soul-crushing. So he made a different choice. He downsized his lifestyle. He found work that aligned with his values. He started spending time on things that actually mattered to him. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. For Sarah, the moment came in that traffic jam. She looked around at all the other commuters staring blankly ahead and realized, I don't want to be one of these people in 20 years. I don't want to spend my life in traffic going to places I don't want to be. So she started asking herself different questions. Not, how can I be more successful? But, how can I be more myself? Not, what should I achieve next? But, what would make me feel most alive? And slowly, gradually, she began making changes. Small changes at first. She started saying no to things that drained her energy. She started saying yes to things that sparked her curiosity. She began writing in a journal every morning, connecting with her authentic thoughts and feelings. She started taking walks in nature, remembering what it felt like to be present. And then bigger changes. She changed careers to something more aligned with her values. She ended relationships that were based on who she pretended to be rather than who she really was. She began creating art again, something she'd abandoned years ago. Here's what's beautiful about these stories. None of these people had a complete life plan. None of them knew exactly where they were going. They just knew where they didn't want to stay. And that was enough. Because Jung discovered something profound. You don't need to have all the answers to start living meaningfully. You just need to start listening to the quiet voice inside that's been trying to get your attention. You just need to start honoring what that voice is telling you. You just need to start making choices based on what feels authentic rather than what looks impressive. And when you do, when you make that quiet decision to stop just existing and start truly living, something extraordinary happens. The universe starts conspiring to help you. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. People appear who are perfectly suited to help you on your journey. Opportunities present themselves that align with your authentic path. Jung called this synchronicity in service of individuation. But I call it life responding to your authentic commitment. The moment you decide to live meaningfully is the moment your real life begins. Here's what no one tells you about finding meaning. It doesn't eliminate suffering. It doesn't make life easy. It doesn't guarantee happiness. But it does something far more profound. It gives your suffering a place to go. Jung understood this better than anyone. His own journey toward meaning was filled with darkness, confusion, and pain. He experienced what he called a confrontation with the unconscious that brought him to the edge of what felt like madness. He faced his deepest fears, his shadow, his mortality, his limitations. But through this process, he discovered something revolutionary. When your life has meaning, when you're connected to your authentic self, when you're living in alignment with your deepest values, suffering transforms. It stops being meaningless pain that just happens to you. It becomes meaningful struggle that shapes you, teaches you, strengthens you. It becomes part of your story rather than something that disrupts your story. Jung put it beautifully. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And the path to becoming who you truly are inevitably involves struggle. But when that struggle has meaning, when it's in service of your growth, your authenticity, your contribution to the world, it becomes bearable, more than bearable. It becomes transformative. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria came to therapy after her husband of 25 years left her for a younger woman. She was devastated, angry, lost. For months, she couldn't understand why this had happened to her. The pain felt meaningless, cruel, unfair. But slowly, through our work together, she began to see her suffering differently. She realized that her marriage had been built on her playing a role rather than being herself. She had been the perfect wife, the supportive partner, the selfless caregiver. But she had never been Maria. The end of her marriage, though painful, was also an invitation to discover who she really was beneath all those roles, to reconnect with dreams she had abandoned, to develop parts of herself she had neglected, to build a life based on her authentic desires rather than other people's expectations. The divorce didn't stop being painful, but it started being meaningful. It became the catalyst for her becoming who she was truly meant to be, and that made all the difference. This is what Jung meant when he talked about meaning making. It's not about avoiding difficulty. It's about transforming difficulty into wisdom. It's about using your struggles as raw material for your growth. It's about turning your wounds into your wisdom. When you live a meaningful life, you develop what Jung called inner peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of deep acceptance. Acceptance of yourself with all your flaws and complexities. Acceptance of life with all its beauty and tragedy. Acceptance of your journey with all its twists and turns. You stop fighting reality. You stop wishing your life was different. You start working with what is to create what could be. You realize that your life, exactly as it is, with all its imperfections, is the perfect raw material for creating something meaningful. And in that realization, you find peace. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of wanting everything you have. The peace of knowing that your life matters, that your struggles have purpose, that your story is part of something larger and more beautiful than you ever imagined. We've come to the end of our journey together, and I want to leave you with the most important thing Jung ever discovered, the thing that changed not just his life, but the lives of countless people who followed his teachings. If you're feeling empty, lost, disconnected, meaningless, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are not ungrateful. You are being invited. Invited to go deeper. Invited to dig beneath the surface of your life. Invited to reconnect with the part of you that knows exactly who you are and what you're here to do. Jung spent his entire career studying this invitation. He called it the call to individuation, the call to become who you truly are. And here's what he discovered. This call comes to everyone, comes in the form of restlessness, dissatisfaction, emptiness, anxiety, depression, comes as that nagging feeling that something is missing, comes as the question that haunts you at 3 a.m. Is this all there is? Most people, when they hear this call, try to make it go away. They numb it with substances, with shopping, with busyness, with achievement, with relationships, with anything that will drown out the voice. But Jung discovered that this voice is not your enemy. It's your greatest ally. It's your inner wisdom trying to guide you toward a life of meaning. It's your authentic self trying to break free from the prison of other people's expectations. It's your soul trying to wake you up before you sleepwalk through your entire existence. The invitation is simple. Stop running, turn around, listen, and then begin the most important journey you'll ever take. The journey back to yourself. This journey will require courage because it means disappointing some people. It means letting go of identities that no longer serve you. It means facing parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It means choosing authenticity over approval. It means choosing meaning over comfort. But Jung promised, and I promise you, on the other side of this journey is a life you actually want to live. A life that feels like yours. A life that whispers with every breath, this matters. This is real. This is who I'm meant to be. You don't need to chase meaning. You don't need to search for purpose. You don't need to find yourself. You need to cultivate what's already there. You need to water the seeds of authenticity that have been dormant inside you. You need to create space for your true self to emerge. And it starts today. Starts with a simple question. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? Who would I be if no one was watching? What would make me feel most alive? Listen to the answers. Trust the answers. Act on the answers. And watch as your life slowly, beautifully transforms from something you endure into something you celebrate. Jung spent his life showing us the way. Now, it's your turn to walk the path back to yourself, the path toward meaning, the path toward a life worth living. Your authentic life is waiting. All you have to do is say yes. Yes to who I really am. Yes to what I really want. Yes to the life I'm meant to live. The time is now. Your life is calling. Will you answer? Thank you for joining me on this journey through Carl Jung's wisdom on cultivating a meaningful life. If this resonated with you, take the first step today. Ask yourself the difficult questions. Listen to the answers. and begin the most important journey of your life, the journey back to your authentic self. Your meaningful life is not a destination. It's a daily practice. It's a choice you make moment by moment to live as who you truly are. Start now.